Hey everyone, welcome to another Yesshift News Desk edition. We've got quite a bit to talk about on this one, broadcasting live today, Sunday, March 29th, 2026. Dad is busy with the Las Vegas drum show today, but I'll fill you all in on all of this. And of course, he'll be back on the show. We have a couple episodes we're doing the second week of April, and we also have something coming out this Wednesday morning. Something, yeah. You'll see the two of us and a couple guests on that morning. So, first off, what do we have to talk about today? We have the new Yes album title revealed to us. We've also got, I've got reviews of Asia Live in England, the Blu ray. I got the Blu ray copy of that. And I got the CD of Oliver Wakeman's Mother's Ruin 20th Anniversary Edition. So I'll be talking about that as well. And there are even a few more John Anderson and the Band Geeks tour dates that got added. We interviewed Phil Castellano, one of the keyboardists in the band, last time we put out an episode, and it's a really fun conversation. So go check that out after this when you have a moment. But first off, we just want to do rapid fire through a few different topics, bits of news that came out within the last couple of weeks. So a week ago, this is more anecdotal, this particular item here. I watched a film called Home Again. It came out in 2017, stars Reese Witherspoon. And the beginning of it had I've seen all good people. It opens with those opening verses and then goes through your move during this montage when Witherspoon's character is sort of explaining her life story, her whole deal type of thing. So I was kind of surprised by that. And I ended up enjoying the film more than I thought I would. She plays a 40-year-old mother who's kind of separated from her husband and raising two daughters, and they moved to Los Angeles and taken they're these three guys who are young filmmakers and they need a place to stay. So I thought it was an enjoyable film, but yeah, I was surprised to hear I've seen all good people in that, especially with all the Yes album talk we've been doing lately here on the show. So yeah, I recommend it. Maybe you'll enjoy the film. All right, so now on to news items proper. Trevor Horn has continued posting videos on his Facebook page. There was one where he had a 1960 Fender Precision bass. Always fun to see him with instruments in these videos. There were photos from a recent Roundhouse London show, and it showed the people there, including one Rick Astley. So that's a bit of a surprise there. And he also posted a graphic showing 6 shows that he's doing with his band, Trevor Horn and his band, in December. So I'll go ahead and show that real quick. Let's see, share screen, make sure I'm sharing the correct tab. And the graphic is very much in the vein of Trevor Horn's memoir, Adventures in Modern Recording. There we go. So, playing Trevor Horn and his band playing the songs he produced, played, and sang on December 2026. So, this begins Wednesday, December 9th, Leeds O2 Academy. Then go to Liverpool and Bristol on the 10th and 11th, Birmingham, London on the 16th and 17th, and ending on Manchester on the 19th of December. So very exciting stuff. This, I'm sure, will be a really enjoyable little tour for people to attend. So definitely go check that out if you are nearby and have the time and whatnot. Okay, so we also have a graphic that was shared on the Bill Bruford page of the Pete Roth Trio tour dates. And for those Trevor Horn shows, you could go to Ticketmaster and check out the ticket options there. Now, the Pete Roth Trio, I think some of these dates had already been shared. You could go to PeteRothTrio.com for these. But you got April 30th in University of Surrey and Guildford, UK. You got Poole, UK as well on May 8th. And you got an Estonia show on May 12th. And then you got a few Canada shows on May 27th, 28th, 29th, 30th, and 31st. Then back to the UK with Luton and Wolverhampton and Wavendon on June 4th, 6th, 19th, and 20th. Wavendon being 2 nights in a row. But then I think this one might be new. November 8th, Band on the Wall in Manchester, UK. So there you go. Go to PeteRothTrio.com to stay up to date with the tour dates going on for Pete Roth Trio. Next up, 14 shows from King Crimson's 1995 double trio tour in Europe are now available for streaming and download in the Nugs app. You can listen now at nugs.net/King Crimson. I think that might be something where you'd have to sign up. I may have used Nugs to watch one thing in the past. I can't remember if that's where I watched the Beat concert footage before it got released on home video or if it was something else. But yeah, I took a look on the page. There are a couple Buenos Aires shows from 94 and a few Royal Albert Hall recordings from 1995. So really great stuff there. And King Crimson also on the King Crimson page, they posted that the March 12th, 1972 show is now available on DGM Live. So very great stuff. King Crimson and Bill Bruford, having a history with that band. I've really come to reappreciate King Crimson, revisiting some of the music from the early 70s and mid 80s, these last few years of doing this show. And there's stuff I like from the late 60s as well. Other eras I'm not as familiar with, but yeah, really cool that these recordings are available. Now, on that note, Stickmen, Stickmen having alumni from King Crimson, Tony Levin, Pat Mastelotto, and you also have Marcus Reuter in the band. I just want to remind people to support Stickmen by going to stickmen.bandcamp.com or stickmen-bootlegs.bandcamp.com. They have recordings of some of their concerts, some soundboards, some audience, I believe. And, support them in light of the recent theft that they experienced while touring South America. There's a whole thing. We sort of talked about that on the Drum Talk TV News Desk report recently. But yeah, just want to remind people. And if you hear anything suspicious that might help them out, let them know. Because, all that stuff, hard drives and whatnot, it's really unfortunate. But speaking of Bandcamp, Prog Collective's full discography is available on Bandcamp for $39. That's a project that was spearheaded by Billy Sherwood for a while, and then Fernando Perdomo sort of picked it up from what I remember. It included such guests as Rick Wakeman, and I think was Jeff Downs in the mix there? Maybe he was. I think there are a couple other Yes band members, but let me just look it up for prosperity purposes. So Prog Collective. Yeah, so this will be the progcollective.bandcamp.com. Okay, yeah. So we've had Peter Banks in his final appearance on the, Prog Collective started in 2012-ish, so that would have been a year before Banks's passing. William Shatner was also involved at some point. You got Dream Theater, Nectar, Asia, or rather members of Yes, Dream Theater, Nectar, Asia, Gong, and more. You also got Steve Stevens, Steve Morse. So they've been involved in Prog Collective at some point or another. But yeah, go check these out on Bandcamp. Um, yeah, because you don't want to miss out on that whole deal. I believe there are 6 releases. So yeah. I see in the comments on YouTube, Lynn Heel is tuning in, and Kevin Still is also tuning in, saying hello all. Yeah, thanks for chiming in and whatnot. Really appreciate you all checking this out and hearing the prog news that I have to share. Prog Stock actually put out a newsletter this morning, like shortly before I went on here. So the Prog Stock Festival is coming October 8th through 10th, so 8th, 9th, and 10th of October. And they said this year's festival will be Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, no pre-show, no Sunday. And they basically explained that the reason for this is that the venue, the Williams Center over in New Jersey, I believe it is. Yeah, Rutherford, New Jersey. The Williams Center is also the home of a church, and in the past they've kind of displaced the church on the Sundays that they've had shows, but that's no longer an option. So instead of Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, they're doing Thursday, Friday, and Saturday this year. But for Sunday, October 11th, they're hoping to organize a brunch at an area hotel or restaurant as a way to spend some time as a community before people leave town. They said that this year's headliners will be Voyage 35, featuring Colin Edwin and John Wesley, Spock's Beard, and right there it includes Alan Morris, Dave Maros, Ryo Okamoto, Ted Leonard, and Nick Potters. I really enjoyed the show that I saw of Spock's Beard back in early February. I did a whole episode talking about that. It was awesome. Still the only concert I've attended this year. We'll have to see what the next one I attend is. Eddie Jobson, UK Revisited, will also be headlining. So again, Eddie Jobson, a technically Yes alumnus, but yeah, that includes Eddie Jobson, Mark Bonilla, Alex Machasik, and Marco Miniman. And it says here also performing Crack the Sky, Resistor, Sonus Umbra, IZZ, or maybe that's Is, The Devil's Staircase, Astronaut, which includes Jane Gedder, Rachel Flowers, Julie Slick, Durga McBroom, and Ruby Dunphy, and Saren Gazer, which includes Michael Sadler, Saren Sadler, Matt Dorsey, Paul Bilatowicz, and Jimmy Keegan. It says more to come. So I'm really excited for these prog stock acts. I don't anticipate that I'll be able to attend in person unless I don't know something surprising or whatever. But the live streams, I really enjoy watching the live streams and even discovering prog bands that I'm not familiar with. So really great stuff. And they also mention a 5-year Patreon pass. It says lock in your favorite seat for 5 years before other passes go on sale. So yeah, check out Prog Stock. You can follow them online for more updates. Let's see, where am I on this? Okay, so Miguel Bass has continued posting bass play-alongs to Yes and Yes-related stuff, one of them being Statue of Justice from Rick Wakeman's Criminal Record. Awaken, one of the Yes tribute bands, Again, we're having Joe Luca from the band on our show on April 9th at 6 p.m. Pacific, ahead of their broadcasting of their 9012 Live concert footage. But Awaken will be performing May 8th at Bay Shore in New York. And then the next day, May 9th, Total Master Tane will be doing a laser light show at Dunedin Theater in New Jersey. So, if I were in the area, I would like really try to see both of these like back to back. But, I'm on the West Coast, so not as fortunate when it comes to the Yes tribute bands. Okay, so getting to John Anderson. John Anderson posted a 30th anniversary message for Frontiers Music. It was very nice, very brief. But there's also an announcement on the John Anderson page of shows in Poland and France. So they announced the final 3 shows of their 2026 World Tour for John Anderson and the Band Geeks of this year. The new shows on sale are October 8th in Poznan, Poland at Sala Ziemi, October 10th in Zabrze. I really should know this. Zabrze, Poland at Dom Muziki i Tanka, and October 13th in Paris, France at Bataclan. And these follow the previously announced 22 US shows and the 13 UK Sweden shows. So really great that they'll be able to go through Europe this time around on this year's touring. So I'm sure that'll be fun for people in those areas who haven't gotten to see John Anderson and the Band Geeks in person. And of course, the Yes are doing their UK Fragile tour on April 22nd. That's when it starts. I see Metalander chiming in. Have heard any rumors about an upcoming Yes release? Yeah, I'm actually getting to that in a moment. So yeah, sticking with Yes and the Fragile tour, I caught up on recent interviews. Jay Shellen and Billy Sherwood each showed up on Rock and Roll Blues Experience. You can find those on YouTube. They're each telling their own stories, history with the band and talking about Fragile. Billy was also on Prog Rock Files of Gary Foster on WCR FM, which also played the tracks Roundabout and Mirror to the Sky. There's also recently a Roger Dean Q&A. He and his daughter Freya were there. It's on the Roger Dean Facebook page. It broadcasted live on March 25th, a couple hours before our Phil Castellano interview. And Roger mentioned there's an autumn US tour for Yes that he had just found out about, and he'd like to go. So I guess they're sort of working out details. He doesn't know too much about it. He said that his next book will be his biggest one. Showed a copy of it. And he can't talk about the art for the new Yes and Asia albums. He has to wait until either band basically says something. So yeah, check out that fan Q&A that he did. It was on Facebook Live, and I know this past year Facebook has had a rule where a Facebook Live video only stays up for 30 days. So I hope that they repost it so that it can stay up, whether it be on Facebook or on YouTube, because I don't know if they're archiving these. So yeah, I would say check that out as soon as you can, just in case. Metalander also says there's another release of Fish Out of Water coming out for a 50th anniversary. Yeah, I think I brought that up on one of the Vinyl Adventures episodes I did recently. I don't know if it was the Jazz Sabbath one or the Yes album one, but yeah, there's another one of those. It's on Cherry Red Records, I believe. But getting back to this current Yes stuff, John Davison was interviewed for Rolling Stone, and he talked about the Moody Blues music, how he wasn't as familiar with it, and once he met Emily Lodge and John Lodge, he talked about like meeting them, and of course he's married to Emily now, and how he became more of a fan of the music. Um, and he also mentioned, I don't know why this possibility never occurred to me, but apparently around the time that Chris wanted, this would have been, I guess, 2014, 2015, when Chris was going through his health stuff, I think. Chris wanted Billy Sherwood to do some new songwriting with Yes for an album after Heaven and Earth. And Billy was involved with some of the, I believe, the mixing on Heaven and Earth. And of course, a year later, he was asked to sub for Chris. And then unfortunately, we lost Chris, but Billy has really done a great job carrying the bass torch there, continuing that whole tradition. But yeah, I don't know why this never occurred to me that they would want Billy to be involved with an album right after Heaven and Earth, all that stuff was happening. But it makes total sense. Now, of course, because they lost Chris, they felt that they couldn't do an album right away. And it wasn't until lockdown that they really felt the need to, they were like, now is time. And they've put out a couple albums since then, The Quest and Mirror to the Sky, which I've really enjoyed both of those albums. He was also asked what would happen if when Steve Howe retires. And this is a quote from that Rolling Stone article. John Davison said, quote, "Well, Steve has given us his blessing that he'd like us to continue because, as Rick Wakeman once said, there will always be a yes. And I know that one criterion that Steve said was, I hope that it's always progressive. And honestly, I don't think we'll have a problem with that," unquote. So this is something that fans have wondered about, and it feels like they've kind of danced around, what will happen when Steve retires at some point, and they kind of danced around the answer, but we've kind of got a more concrete answer here. Now, that fuels speculation, if Steve ever retires, who could be the new guitarist in the band. People have thrown out names like Fernando Perdomo or Jimmy Hahn. Maybe I think someone mentioned that, who was it? It was an online friend in Yes fandom who mentioned that Oliver Day would be an interesting choice. But yeah, when we get to that point, we'll just have to see what happens. John Davison was also interviewed for Biff Bam Pop, and that also included like his whole history with John Lodge, and talked about the upcoming 2 shows this July, and how John Lodge had said he thinks that the band could carry on beyond him, which was really strange to imagine. But yeah, they've got the 2 shows happening in July in tribute to John Lodge, and they'll see what the response is, I guess, see what goes on from there. But in this Biff Bam Pop article, John Davison also mentioned the title of the upcoming Yes album. All right, so you all ready for this? Drum roll, please. That was a terrible drum roll. I tried to verbalize, wasn't it? But it's titled Aurora. And I like this title. It feels like it fits with the imagery that is kind of, on Mirror to the Sky and even Down's Braid Association Celestial Songs. So I can imagine maybe Roger Dean's art for this new album could feel like something in the vein of those album covers, maybe dark blue night sky with some lights. Or maybe I could be totally off. Maybe he'll do something really different. But yeah, there we go. We have the title for the new Yes album, Aurora. And in a Now Spinning magazine interview, this is up on YouTube, John Davison mentioned that the new Yes album has been sent off to the presses and will probably come out in June. So previously he had said July, and even said July in this Rolling Stone article I mentioned, which I think might have been from a time before this Now Spinning magazine interview. But yeah, it's hopeful. I hope it's June. That's sooner than July, and I need the new Yes music sooner. I'm really excited to hear how it may sound. I recently re-listened to The Quest and Mirror to the Sky, and I feel like those albums have more, uh, audio continuity than any previous pair of consecutive Yes albums. I think they flow really well. So I imagine this third album of this era will also be somewhat in that vein. So really exciting stuff. John Davison also in that Now Spinning interview said he thinks Relayer is still on the horizon. The band performing all of Relayer in this album series. And again, Relayer was planned for 2020, and then the pandemic happened, and then it got delayed a couple more times until it was canceled altogether. They felt Steve Howe had said we feel we've overcooked the idea, so I guess they kind of felt less enthusiastic about playing Relayer those after those couple years of having to push it back. But hearing John Davison say that they'll play Relayer at some point, that gives me a little bit of hope. I feel like I don't know, I kind of feel like he wouldn't say this unless it would for sure be possible, with, I guess we'll have to see, will it be this current lineup? Would it be, and again, I don't know when Steve Howe would retire, and I'm still enjoying Steve Howe being in the band, but I do kind of wonder, would it be beyond that? But I don't know. I see Gilly Good News chiming in the comments from YouTube. Says, love the Yes title, have seen the Southern Lights. Oh, great. Yeah. So yeah, like I was saying, I enjoy the title as well. It feels like it fits nicely after Mirror to the Sky. John Davison in that Now Spinning interview also mentioned that a fan had told him about his tenure with Yes compared to John Anderson's previous tenures with Yes. And interestingly, John Davison has been with the band for 14 years. He joined in early 2012, I believe, and it's 2026 now. And John Anderson has, his first uninterrupted tenure with Yes was from mid 1968 to late 79. Some people say maybe early 80s, so I guess that'd be 11 and a half years, something like that. Then 90125 up to him leaving to do ABWH. That's 5 years from there, from 83 to 88. And then he was back in Yes, I would say maybe mid to late 1990 at the earliest, and then left in 2004 after the 35th anniversary tour. So that's 14 years there. So John Davison might surpass that particular final uninterrupted period of John Anderson as a member of Yes. You just have to give it another year, which it's looking like he will. So very interesting stuff. But yeah, John Davison is always talking about, wanting to honor the people who created this music and Yes. And I think that the band does a really great job with that. So yeah, interesting interviews. Again, real fingers crossed about the Relayer thing. I saw Gates of Delirium on the Royal Affair tour, and it was great. I would really like for more people to get to experience that, and to get to experience Sound Chaser and To Be Over. Jeff Downs was also interviewed on Now Spinning magazine, talked about the Fragile tour and Asia, and he mentioned Lexicon, the Icon collection that's coming out this year, the Wetton Downs collaboration with John Wetton, and how one of the discs has unreleased material that he and John Wetton worked on, and he talked about how Icon was pretty much an avenue for them to work outside the confines of Asia. With Asia, you have a particular rocking commercial sound. With Icon, you could get more artsy in a way. But yeah, I'm really excited to hear that music. And he was also interviewed on Hidden Gems and Buried Treasures on Cam Glen Radio 107.9 FM, where he talked about the Fragile tour. And I think that program also played Siberian True and Roundabout. It might have been a version of Roundabout that had John Davison on it. I don't know which release that would have been from if that's the case. But there's also an announcement on the original Asia Facebook page saying Asia is pleased to announce that they will be playing on the Blue Cruise from the 8th of April through the 15th of April 2027. And tickets go on sale April 7th. So there's a ticket link on the bluecruise.com. And there's a poster for this that includes some of the people involved with that. Yeah, so it's this poster here. So Justin Hayward of the Moody Blues, Rick Springfield, Asia, Don Felder, formerly of the Eagles, Starship featuring Mickey Thomas, the orchestra, Al Stewart, Leonid and Friends featuring Music of Chicago, the Nelsons, Firefall, Pure Prairie League, and it says here Yacht Rock on the High Seas, Ambrosia, Peter Beckett, the voice of Player, John Ford Coley, Elliot Lurie of Looking Glass, and then below that it says Randy Hansen, the music of Jimi Hendrix, Young Dubliners, Mellow Yellow, Pair Duo featuring Julie Raggins, Mike Dawes, Marbin, Fernando Perdomo, The Bottom Feeders, The Empty Pockets, All Hat No Cattle, and Dueling Pianos. So I'm sure that should be a really fun cruise there. And I saw that Tom Brislam posted a video about Kansas being on the Rock and Romance cruise that goes up to Fort Lauderdale. So really fun stuff. And Dave Kersner posted pics from Cruise to the Edge that happened a few weeks back, including a picture of Billy Sherwood. I also remember seeing Randy McStein post a video performing with Tony Levin and Nick DiVirgilio. So really fun cruises and whatnot. But all right, so I'll get to this review of Asia live in England. So like I mentioned, I got the Blu-ray release of this, and I'll go ahead and show the photos that I have here. I also have the case with the Blu-ray itself with me, which I'll get that out. Let's see, share screen, share tab. Okay, so here you can see the hype sticker that was on the plastic wrapping. And let me make sure I have the right set here. Yeah, I do. So it says Asia, Downs, Donati, Mitchell, Whitley, live in England. And I got it right here. So this came out March 13th, earlier this month. Same day that Oliver Wakeman's Mother's Ruin album came out. I'll review that in a little bit. But yeah, I got the Blu-ray here. And I'll show you more of the packaging before. This is what the Blu-ray menu looks like. So you got the track Heat of the Moment from this concert playing. And again, this was recorded at Trading Boundaries about a year ago, I believe it was. So yeah, Asia, live in England, 2025. You got the chapters, which include the songs as well as a few different interviews. The interviews I think were listed in the special features actually, but when I played the whole concert film, it would just, at the end of the credits, it would just dive right into the interviews automatically, interestingly. So that's the front of the case. That's the back. You got the track list there. So we got Heat of the Moment, Only Time Will Tell, Soul Survivor, One Step Closer, Time Again, Wildest Dreams, Without You, Cutting It Fine, and Here Comes the Feeling. So again, that's a first night of 3 nights where they played entire albums, the first 3 Asia albums, Asia, Alpha, and Astra. This night, of course, was the self-titled debut album. And then after that, they played basically bonus tracks, you could call them. The title bonus tracks even came up before this next one, which was Ride Easy. And then that was followed by Video Killed the Radio Star. And when I was watching the concert film, I was thinking to myself, oh, I hope Video Killed the Radio Star isn't the final song here, because, I love that song, but it would feel weird ending an Asia show with it here. But that was followed by The Heat Goes On and then Daylight. So you got, Ride Easy and Daylight, I guess, are kind of considered the more obscure ones here compared to these other songs, even though they've definitely played these songs before within the last couple decades. And this was also mixed by John Mitchell, so very great job there. This is how the booklet on the inside looks. It's on the left side. When you open it, it's on the left side. It's behind these little clip things. It has an essay by Dave Gallant talking about the history of this lineup. It got the Blu-ray disc there. See the Frontiers logo on the side. And this is toward the end of the booklet, a nice photo of the current Asia lineup. And I really like the coloring of this logo here, the orange and blue. It kind of reminds me, it feels very mid-90s to me in a way, in a good way. I really like how that looks. But down here you see images of I guess graphics for night 1, night 2, and night 3. It says 3 nights live. So it looks like they're for sure sticking to the plan of releasing these other nights at some point. So maybe they'll be released months apart from each other. That's Mother's Ruin. Okay, so talking about this concert and the experience of watching it. Throughout the concert, Trading Boundaries is not as big as an arena or something, so there's not as much visual spectacle as you might typically get in like the bigger concert films, but the lighting is nice. There's some blue and red lighting. Sometimes the footage is shown in black and white. And when the music started, don't go into this expecting it to sound exactly like John Wetton. If you go in with that expectation, you might not be as satisfied, but Harry Whitley does a great job serving the Asia songs. He's not John Wetton, but he's honoring him and the songs and helping to bring them to life, and the rest of the band are as well. They do a great job keeping the energy up. So within the first couple songs, especially since Heat of the Moment and Only Time Will Tell are, like, to me, the staples of Asia, it took some getting used to with the new feel of the whole thing. But by Soul Survivor, I was pretty bought in, and really enjoyed the set list here. And again, it's interesting hearing Heat of the Moment as the opener. I'm so used to it being the encore song, basically. But because they're doing the full album and it begins with that song, they begin with it here. Similar to how Yes begins with Roundabout in the Fragile part of their newer recent set list, which can kind of take one off guard when one's used to hearing Roundabout as the encore song. Um, so yeah, I thought this was a good concert to watch, and their interviews, like I mentioned, there's a Jeff Downs interview where he goes over the broad strokes of how this lineup came together and like sort of the post losing John Wetton period. He touched on the Royal Affair tour and how Steve Howe was kind of involved with that. And I guess Jeff had the hope that Steve might return to Asia at that point, but Steve was so committed to Yes. So, like I said, he does a broad strokes history of the last, I guess, decade it would be. I do remember there was a lineup in the works between the Royal Affair tour and this current lineup that would have included Mark Bonilla and um, Carl Palmer still in the band. I think Billy Sherwood maybe. I kind of wish we could have seen that lineup in between these ones, a sort of transition type of thing. Last hoorah for Carl in the band before switching gears. But it's I do really enjoy this lineup though. It's just it kind of feels like there was a lost lineup there that we sort of it would have been interesting to see. But of course, because that tour was so tied to touring with Alan Parsons, and then Alan Parsons had health issues, they had to do away with those plans. But yeah, this lineup really does justice to the material. And so, like I said, there's also a Virgil Donati interview, so you get to know him a bit more. Because I don't know if I've ever watched anything with him talking, so this was good to see. John Mitchell's interview, he talked about how he really likes the Astra album. And Harry Whitley, in his interviews, said he was introduced to Asia via the Triple X album from 2012 and then went backward. So I guess he and I are kind of similar in that we got into Asia in a more modern period of it and then went back. I went in with the Live in Tokyo 2007 DVD and then listened to the first couple albums and then listened to Phoenix when that first reunion album came out. And I was really into that reunion period. And there's also a Roger Dean interview where he talks about the making of the Asia logo. So yeah, these are really good interviews to watch. I'm glad they included them. Now, how would I rate this concert film? Now, the other Asia concert films that I have are the Live in Tokyo one from 2007 with that reunion of the original lineup, and the Asia in Asia concert at the Budokan with Greg Lake subbing for John Wetton in 1983. Now, I would say Asia in Asia, the 1983 concert film, out of 5 stars, I would give that one 4 stars. It's got nice visual presentation and whatnot, and it feels so 80s, which has a charm to it. Live in Tokyo, I think I would give 4.5 out of 5 stars at least, maybe even 5 stars. I have so much nostalgia for that, and I feel it's a great representation of that original lineup having returned. I think they might have had another concert film or two after that with the original lineup, but I'm not sure that I've really checked those out. But yeah, so I own those, and now I own this one, Live in England, Night One, and I think I'd give this one 3.5 out of 5 stars. It's an enjoyable concert, but like I said, it doesn't have as much of the visual spectacle as you'd get from the venues in the Asia in Asia or the Live in Tokyo videos. But I do like the overall feel of the Trading Boundaries venue. You even get to see a little statue in the background, and during Video Kill the Radio Star, you can see the audience singing along to it. There weren't many audience shots, which was interesting. I'm guessing maybe they had to stay seated more calmly throughout most of the set list, and then during Video Kill the Radio Star, they could kind of be a bit looser, and that's when the audience became more visually interesting. But yeah, another reason I would say it's at 3.5 out of 5 is the set list. While I am glad that they honor the original Asia album, we've heard these songs so many times, time and time again, pun intended. They're enjoyable to hear, but I'm definitely gonna be more excited to hear nights 2 and 3, which are Alpha, and especially night 3, because that has Astra, and a lot of that material hadn't been played live before, to my knowledge, except maybe Go, or if they did get played live, it was very rare, maybe. But yeah, I'm really excited that about that progression. I think it'll be like each one of these nights, each of these concert films will be better than the previous one. So, yeah, I think it's still an enjoyable concert film, definitely worth checking out. But I would definitely still put Asia in Asia and Live in Tokyo over this, but that's not a slight against it. I think it's still a well put together concert film. So yeah, definitely get that if that interests you. All right, so moving along, Rick Wakeman. Speaking of Trading Boundaries, on June 13th, Rick and his team will be live at Trading Boundaries in Sussex for a very special edition of his podcast, The Myths and Legends of Rick Wakeman. So people will get to attend that, and that should be a lot of fun. Listened to a newer episode of his podcast where he was asked about the ending of Awaken, and apparently the fan who wrote in this question, which he then um, talked about, well, apparently a fan thought that the ending guitar motif on Awaken, the do 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 do, that probably sounded terrible coming from my mouth, but that little bit, apparently the fan who wrote in thought that it sounded out of place compared to the rest of the song, which is something that I've never felt. In fact, I remember watching the John Anderson and Todd Mobile video of Awaken that didn't end with that, and it felt so strange to me. I was missing that. I really love that ending to the song. And Rick talked about how he's never really thought about it, and how with ARW they didn't do it there either. And Rick has talked up the ARW version of Awaken and how much he really loves it. So it was an interesting thing to think about, and how fan tastes can be so different. And Rick also talked about how the Tormato cover, he maintains that he was the one who threw the tomato. So there have been a couple different accounts of how the tomato got on there. I think Steve Howe had said that, the people at Hypnosis had done it themselves. Though I do kind of wonder if maybe whenever Steve said that he was trying to spare Rick or whatever, I don't know, but whatever the case, the more interesting thing to me was Rick talking about why they didn't go for Roger Dean for the cover of Tormato, or what would have been called a Yes Tor initially, or Yes Tor, TOR. Apparently, Rick and Steve at the time had voted for Roger Dean to come back, but they were outvoted. So I guess John and Chris wanted to stick with Hypnosis, and Rick said that Alan was on the fence, but then John and Chris, I guess, were able to convince him. But then I guess after the whole Tormato thing, I'm sure that probably made the band sort of disenchanted with Hypnosis, probably, I would imagine. And for Drama, they were able to get Roger Dean back, and what a mighty cover for Drama. So yeah, really enjoyed listening to that podcast episode. Rick has been touring with Oliver Wakeman on the East Coast for this Wakeman and Son tour, which tonight, March 29th, is the final show of that tour. And I'll talk about the set list at the end of this show in case there's anyone attending that show who still wants to be surprised. But yeah, Oliver Wakeman has been posting stuff from this tour. There's a pic with Rick Hammond from Roundabout. He's taken some pics during Rick performing a certain solo suite during the concerts. At some point, they kind of got delayed at the airport, so there were a couple of pics from that. There's a King Arthur exhibit at a hotel, I believe, and I think Oliver said he was expecting Rick to like rip off the cape or whatever. And there's a pic with Al Lewis from Star Castle because Oliver Wakeman was involved with that for a little bit. I can't remember if it was shortly before joining us or shortly after, but it was somewhere in that period. But okay, so now, oh yeah, Meadowlander says I just went to Rick and Oliver's concert in New Jersey on the current mini tour. The suite, the one that I was alluding to, was a highlight. Yeah, I'm trying to be careful not saying what it is in case any viewers or listeners want to be a little in the dark. But yeah, feel free to comment more about that concert, and I'll read the comments a bit later in this episode. But okay, so now we get to the Mother's Ruin review portion. Now, as a reminder, Mother's Ruin is an Oliver Wakeman solo album, and it recently got a 20th anniversary edition release. So this, I'll show the pictures I have from that as I go through this. I got this in the mail a few days after the release and came out March 13th. So in retrospect, maybe this was intentional, but I realized later that this came out a couple days before Mother's Day in the UK, and it's called Mother's Ruin. So yeah, maybe that was a bit intentional there. I got this, this one came with an autographed booklet, the booklet that would come within the CD case. This actually has two booklets now. One of them that's in the CD sleeve, and the other was like also in this plastic sleeve that I have, and it's the autographed one. I got it from Talk Shop Live. I haven't checked to see if they still have autographed copies there, so it might be worth checking it out. Go check that out when you have a moment. But yeah, that's the booklet. This is the backside of the CD. You got the track list there, and it comes with timestamps, which is very handy. So got the cover of the CD there. You got the earth with the, what would you call it? I guess it looks like a drip of lava or maybe magma or something. And you got like the swirls in the back that are in gray. And Oliver talked about in the booklet about how back when this was originally released, the colors were darker and they didn't really present the cover as well as he wanted it to look. So this is a correction of that, kind of similar to what Bob Seska told us about how the cover of Magnification came out back in the day. Both of these would have been in the 2000s. This is how the inside of the CD case looks. You got the CD there on the right, and here on the left you have this image of hourglasses. I quite like how these hourglasses look. They kind of remind me of some imagery of prog albums from the 90s, and even maybe some books from that era, like the Goosebumps books, which I really loved. But yeah, the track list on this includes Don't Come Running, The Agent, In the Movies, Walk Away, Mother's Ruin, Calling for You, If You're Leaving, I Don't Believe in Angels, and Wall of Water. And then the bonus tracks are Busy Going Nowhere, Calling for You, with the original mix featuring Damian Wilson, who was Oliver's original choice of vocalist for this album. If You're Leaving, the original mix featuring Paul Manzi. Mother's Ruin, original mix featuring Paul Manzi. And Walk Away, original mix featuring Paul Manzi. And those Paul Manzi ones, from what he says in the booklet, they were released on an EP related to this record back in the day. So a little bonus content there. Really cool to see these versions of the tracks on there. And I know I'm like being a broken record here, but I kind of wish that with Fly From Here, Return Trip, that the Benoit David tracks could have at the very least been bonus tracks, even on a separate disc, on Return Trip or even on the recent Return Trip re-release. But I don't know if there are rights things going on there. It's beyond my area of expertise there. But yeah, I'll get back to Mother's Ruin here. So the lineup of this album includes David Mark Pierce on electric guitars, Moon Kinnaird on vocals, who's also referred to as, I think, a full name here. Keep forgetting if the essay's in the front and the back. Yeah, it's in the back after all the lyrics. Ian Moon Gold. So Moon is a nickname. And then you have Dave Wagstaff on drums and percussion, and Tim Buchanan on 4 and 5 string bass. And of course, you got Oliver on piano, keyboards, and acoustic guitar. And in the backstory that he writes here for Mother's Ruin, he mentions how Moon couldn't commit to being in the band. So for a little bit, his keyboard tech Mike Clark filled in on bass, but eventually Dave Wagstaff suggested bassist Paul Brown and Paul Manzi for vocals. So they rehearsed for a few weeks and then were able to perform and whatnot. So I'm glad that this release showcases the different people involved in this project, at different stages. So I'll go through the tracks and my notes about it. I see Metalander saying Oliver showed up at the merch area after a show to chat and sign autographs. Oh yeah, he's a very friendly guy. We've been trying to see if we can get him back on the show to talk more about this and the upcoming From a Page re-release. So we'll see what happens. But on Mother's Ruin, the track list. So starting with the opening track, Don't Come Running, to me kind of has a Conspiracy or Sherwood feel in terms of rhythm and vocal harmonies. And there's a great keyboard showcase 2.5 minutes into this track, which itself is 5 minutes and 44 seconds long. Then we get to The Agent. This song is 8 minutes, but really feels quick in a good way. Like, it doesn't feel like it drags on at all. You'd listen to it and you'd be very surprised that it's 8 minutes long when you get to the end of it. It begins with these very spacey sounding beeping sounds, and it includes narrative dialogue being sung. There's a nice instrumental interlude a couple minutes in with some great dynamics. And the lyrics, I was reading the lyrics along to listening to this. Basically, like, the life of a secret agent can be full of lies, is what it seems to be talking about. And it can be lonely, as alluded to by the lyrics about not needing friends or family. There's talking in the background about 7 minutes in, and it ends with that same type of beeping that you hear at the start of this. So then we get to In the Movies, 5-minute track. The Agent is more like 8.5 according to this, but yeah, In the Movies, 5 minutes, begins with a storm sound, which makes me think of the swirls on the cover of this album. And I kind of honed in on the lyrics. A long forgotten memory, a page torn from your diary, told me more than I should know. And the tone of this song is more melancholic throughout. The theme of lies continues. there are these lyrics saying, "It never turns out this way in the movies. A life of celluloid is but a lie." And then 3 minutes in, the soundscape feels bigger and more cinematic. So again, there are these recurring themes throughout the songs, and the stories within them kind of make me wonder, like, is this supposed to be a concept album, or are there just similar recurring themes and whatnot? Because you have those things that we kind of expect from narrative concept albums where there's like talking here and there and like certain sound effects. So I do kind of wonder, but would this technically be labeled as a concept album? But all that is to say that this feels like it really flows really well, like all these interconnected pieces. um, each song sounds like it can deviate into a different feel, but they all seem to have a similar type of storytelling, is what I'm trying to say. Now, then we get to Walk Away. Uh, this one I'd heard before. I think this might have been the one that was released ahead of the album. It says, there's the lyrics, "Do you ever feel so small and all alone?" So that continues the loneliness theme again. And there's kind of an arena rock sounding guitar. There might have been more repetition on this song than in previous tracks in terms of the lyrics. It's certainly catchy, and I think Oliver has talked about John Wetton's writing style and how songs like this are kind of an interesting, sort of continuing that amazing tradition of John Wetton's type of thing. Then we get to Mother's Ruin, the title track, which itself is 6 minutes, Walk Away being almost 4.5. And it kind of begins with these vocals are like, oh. Then we get a voice on either an intercom or a megaphone. And this is a song about Mother Earth. There are mentions of dolphins washing up on the beach and the forest falling down. And in the booklet, there's even a 3D graphic that's shaped like maybe a whale or a dolphin. But yeah, there's some nice graphics within the booklet, which I really like. Then there's the lyrics, "I look at all the offers of peace of small countries now up for a lease." And that really stood out to me, especially with some of the stuff you hear in the news and you keep thinking, oh, really want just everyone to just stop and just have everything be peaceful. Then we get to the song "Calling for You," which is 4 minutes long. The drumming at the start of this one reminds me of Rush's Force 10, that, that type of thing. And it gets back to a speedier momentum after the mood of Mother's Ruin. And then we get to "If You're Leaving," which is almost 5 minutes long. And this is a slower, more power ballady type of song. It's got some nice piano in there. And even though this song is slower, this is a song that I ended up wanting to sing along to as I was listening to it. I was reading the lyrics, singing along to them. And it still gets instrumentally busy midway through. And then you have this power ballad guitar ending, which ends in a fade out. And I honestly wish that it wasn't a fade out ending. I don't know, maybe something that feels, without the fade out, maybe a few more seconds to like have a finish for the song. But that's just a very minor critique there. I really enjoy this song. It might even be my favorite on the album, which, Dad and I have talked about slower songs versus faster, bigger songs. And there are times when I really appreciate the ballady songs even more. Our tastes are like slightly different and whatnot. And yeah, then we get to, it's about, a relationship, of course. And then we get to "I Don't Believe in Angels," which continues this stuff about relationships. That track is 4.5 minutes long, and it's got some nice piano again. I'm guessing this might be post breakup, and the sound of it feels more everyday at, or the lyrics, I mean, feel more everyday at first, with a mention of stuff like a wonder bra, but then when the music pace picks up, it feels like we've risen above the earth. So it kind of elevates and whatnot. The woman is the angel in the song, and the speaker doesn't believe in. So I feel like this might be saying something about when people put others on the pedestal, or this whole thing of idealization. So it's very thought-provoking stuff. Then we get to Wall of Water, and at 10 minutes and 43 seconds, this is the longest track. The instrumental, uh, a bit at the start, feels like it's part of a film score, maybe even a bit Trevor Rabin-esque. And when the music pace picks up again, there's this sense of urgency, and it includes an intercept message. The whole phone call thing where it's like, "We're sorry, your call could not be completed as dialed." So stuff like that can kind of be a little bit of a surprise. Uh, and I quite like the fantasy, dreamlike feel of the instrumentation in the back portion of this track. And in terms of the story in this song, it feels like the relationship has really ended. There's a heartbeat sound at the end, and you can hear someone saying something along the lines of, "May the front line take the heart, place your bets, ladies and gentlemen." So, yeah, kind of a really contrasting stuff there. It's a bit chilling, interesting way to end the album. And then the bonus tracks, we get to Busy Going Nowhere, and this has Paul Manzi on vocals. It's got a piano and feels very bluesy. I quite like the lyrics. "I know there's a world out there that doesn't know my name." I do kind of wish the lyrics for this song were included in the booklet, but they are easy to make out when you listen to the song. All the lyrics are very easy to hear. You know, it's just the voices in the background on a couple of these songs are kind of tough for me to make out right away. But yeah, apparently this song I don't think was on the EP that he mentioned in the booklet. I'm trying to remember what he said. Like, if this was an unreleased song, let me double check that. So Busy Going Nowhere. Let's see. Busy Going Nowhere. Yeah, the backstory of this album is like 4 pages long. Oh, okay. All right. So in the process, I unearthed Damien Wilson's original version of Calling for You, which is included here. Paul Manzi had also re-recorded 3 tracks from the Mother's Ruin album for a limited run EP, which also featured Busy Going Nowhere. Okay, so I was misremembering what I'd read here. Busy Going Nowhere and those other 3 tracks were on the EP that I mentioned. So yeah, we get Calling for You with Damien Wilson, and If You're Leaving, Mother's Ruin, and Walk Away with Paul Manzi. And it's great hearing these different voices, these different versions of the songs. I don't know if I have a strong preference between versions featuring Moon or either of these other people, Damien or Paul, but I feel like they each do a great job filling out the vocals for the songs. I will say that on If You're Leaving, the mix that features Paul Manzi, it felt to me like the fade out was a bit more abrupt. I don't know if that's just me, but yeah, that's kind of how it came across when I was listening to it. But yeah, overall, I really enjoyed this album. It's really great. It's got, between this and Oliver's recent album on Ankara from the last year or a couple years, they're different flavors, but they're both provided by him. And it's really cool. It really shows the breadth of his work. Um, Oh, I see Chris Berry chiming in from Facebook saying, looking forward to picking this up at the Cardiff show in 12 days. Okay, so I guess that would be on the From a Page tour, right? But yeah, really great CD. I really enjoyed taking the time to listen to this, and reading along the lyrics and reading the story in the booklet. There's also a photo of like the faces of the lineup on in the booklet. But yeah, definitely get this. It's very much worth your time. All right, so now we get to um, the concert set list for Wakeman and Son. So I did see Prog Report posted a review of one of the concerts, which sort of filled in gaps for the Yes suite that's in the set list. So I also checked Setlist FM for one of the concerts, the March 24th one in particular. So if there are any differences, I'm unaware of them. But yeah, so if you don't want to, if you're going to attend the final Wakeman and Son show tonight and you don't want the set list spoiled, feel free to tune out now. This is the last item of this particular episode. But okay, so the Wakeman and Son set list began with The Dance of a Thousand Lights with Rick Wakeman on grand piano, and there was a backing track being played. And this is followed by LJW with Oliver on grand piano, and Rick was off backstage. I like how Setlist FM includes these details. It adds a little something to just recapping the set list. It makes it more colorful. And then we get the Yes suite. And in that Prog Report review, there's a mention that Words on a Page was part of this, but I don't see it mentioned in the Setlist FM entry. But, you know, putting those two things together, I think that the Yes suite had bits of Awaken, And You and I, The Gift of Love, Wonder Stories, Words on a Page, possibly, and Roundabout. And it mentions here that there's a back and forth between Rick and Oliver, with Rick on keyboards and Oliver on grand piano. Really cool to include bits of From a Page on there, you know, stuff that Rick was not involved in, but Oliver was very instrumental on. But then we get The Last Battle and Merlin the Magician, with Rick on keyboards and Oliver on grand piano. November Wedding with Oliver on grand piano. That's a very beautiful piece. A Glimpse of Heaven, which was dedicated to the late Dave Cousins of Straubs, and Sweet Georgia Brown, which was dedicated to Rick's late father. And Rick and Oliver were both on keyboards for this. I guess it would be kind of a medley, right? Like these two pieces being played back to back. And then we got the Six Wives suite, which Meadowlander was alluding to earlier. Meadowlander said that the suite was the highlight. And Meadowlander also said that the Wakemans performed a series of suites, which included a Yes suite, which was a trading off of Yes melodies between Rick and Oliver of each one's era in the band. Yeah, okay, thanks for filling in that bit for me. So for the Six Wives suite, you have Rick on keyboards, and then we get excerpts from Journey to the Center of the Earth with Rick on grand piano and Oliver on keyboards. And for the encore, they played the David Bowie song Life on Mars. It says here they very quickly came back out after exiting, which is a trend I've seen in a couple recent concerts, you know, with Spock's Beard and Project. You know, people are just kind of overdoing the whole let's get off stage for a while, then come back for the encore. But Rick was on grand piano, and there's a piano solo arrangement. And then ends with The Jig with Rick and Oliver on keyboards. So this sounds like it was a really fun show for people to see. Unfortunately, it was only on the East Coast, and Rick has talked about recently how he's told by US promoters that there's not as much desire, especially on the West Coast, supposedly, which just boggles my mind. And so potentially these could be the Rick's final shows in the US. unless I don't know, unless maybe he does another one of these types of collaboration tours instead of a solo show, or I don't know. I kind of get the sense he would have to be with a band for there to be more demand, but I don't know. I'm just speculating, at, and just like I don't know, kind of going on tangents here at the end, I guess. I see Cal Talbot tuning in from Nova Scotia, Canada. Yeah, thanks for tuning in. But yeah, that's it for now. And looking forward to hearing about Oliver Wakeman's upcoming From a Page tour. That's something I'd also really love to come to the US, especially on the West Coast, because, like I've said, From a Page is a great collection of Yes material. It feels, and I'm really glad that that music saw the light of day and that we're getting this expanded edition next month. So definitely have to check that out. All right, so thanks for tuning in, everyone. This is a pretty lengthy one, but I was able to still get done before I have to go run an errand. So you can follow us at Yesshift on Facebook and YouTube, and go to anchor.fm/yesshift for the audio version. And you can write to us via yesshiftpodcast@gmail.com with any feedback and suggestions and whatnot. But okay, so next time you'll see us, we're putting something out this coming Wednesday morning. So go check that out. And then second week of April, we might be doing a Steve Howe themed episode for his birthday on April 8th. And then we'll interview Joe Luca of Awaken on April 9th. So thanks again, and we'll see you all soon. Bye.